Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're at. Welcome to the Guava webinar on the top 5 reasons to archive social media. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Q Mangus. I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at Guava, and I'm going to be your host for this event. Now, just a few items to take note of before we get started. If you have any questions, feel free to put them through on the chat panel. They're on the side. They're in your WebEx UI, or on the Q&A. If you have questions as we go along, put them in there. We'll get to them at the end. But yeah, so remember that, and we will have some time at the end to be able to answer questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, what I wanted to do to begin with is I just wanted you to think of a few questions. Well, let me ask you a few questions for you to think about. First of all, how has social media changed your job function? How is your job different today because of social media, whether that's Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever? Okay? Think about that. You don't have to answer. Just think about that for yourself. Secondly, how has social media affected your company, your organization? How is your company different today because of social media? And finally, another thing to think about is how is your life different because of social media? So, really interesting thoughts. Just be thinking about that as we go through here. Just a couple of the answers for me, being in marketing, social media has changed my job quite a bit, right? I use social media quite often to be able to communicate with you, communicate with customers, with other people. And I would imagine that that many of the attendees here probably saw one of our Twitter posts or Facebook posts about this webinar. So that's changed my job function. It's changed our organization, as I said. We promote things differently because of social media. And then finally, for me, my life is different because of social media, because of the connections I have and the updates. There's connections you can have on social media that may not have been possible today. And I've seen that in my personal life. Now, with all that being said in those thoughts, let's talk about this a little bit. Really, messaging and social media have grown a ton since the early 2000s. Now, because of that, you've got to maintain control of your content. Social media data and other kind of messaging, you have to control that content. Now, Guava can help you. We can make managing social media an easy task. So today we're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss first the growth of social media. Then we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons to archive social media. We'll talk about ways to manage social media, and finally we'll talk about the solutions Guava provides to help you mitigate those risks of social media use. So if you don't already know, you'd be amazed at the growth of social media. It has become one of the most popular ways to communicate. Really, and as of July 2009, social media has surpassed email as the most popular collaboration tool. It's been a few years that's actually surpassed it. And really, the other interesting thing to think about is roughly 1 billion people access social media at work. So something to think about as you really start to think about a plan for how you'll manage social media. And some other interesting facts, as you can see here on the screen, there are over 1 billion active users on Facebook, and over 200 million users on Twitter. And of course, of those users, 16 minutes of every hour is spent on social media here in the US. So with this increase in popularity of social media, organizations need to be prepared for the risks associated with the misuse of social media. You need to be prepared for this. So really, to mitigate these risks and ensure proper use, and of course to protect from future litigation, you have to be archiving social media. It's a must. So let's talk about the 5 reasons why you should be archiving social media. So first and foremost, we have the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. It actually require all organizations to archive all types of electronic communication. So any kind of electronic communication you have, including social media, has to be archived. Social media is used as an enterprise collaboration tool at ever-increasing rates. You're probably using this internally to be able to collaborate within your organization. Furthermore, social media can easily be used in inappropriate or harmful ways. We've all seen examples of that, and we'll talk about that a little bit here. And data can be leaked from your organization via social media, meaning things can be broadcast that could never be broadcast before with the click of a button. And, of course, there are regulations that you must comply with. So there's a burden on your organization to be able to comply with these government regulations. I'm going to expound a little bit on these. So, according to the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, or FRCP, organizations have a duty to preserve all electronic stored information, or ESI. So the amendments of FRCP describe the duty to preserve potential evidence when litigation can be reasonably anticipated, quoting from that there. So what this does is it presents a unique set of issues for you if you may become involved in litigation. Because it requires organizations to preserve email and other electronic communication, including social media and mobile stuff. And, according to FRCP, all employee-created social media content that is work-related, regardless of whether or not it was created on a personal account, is discoverable. So because of this fact alone, you must be able to quickly and easily access, search, place litigation holds, and publish this information. Otherwise, you could face fines, sanctions, and other penalties. So really, this is a requirement. That's how the law sees it. So if you're ever involved in litigation, you better be prepared. One other reason to archive social media. Furthermore, as I said before, social media is being used in enterprise collaboration. More and more people are using Facebook and Twitter to collaborate within your company. And as we stated before, roughly 1 in every 8 people on Earth has a Facebook account, with about 1 billion people using social media at work. And then some interesting facts here. As of last year, in 2003, there was 100 hours worth of video uploaded each minute to YouTube. Think about that, 100 hours a minute, or 100 hours of video a minute to YouTube. In 2007, it was 8 hours per minute. And then just to show you how things are growing, Facebook took almost 900 days, 852 days to reach 10 million users. Google Plus only took 16 days to hit this user count. It's growing. Social media is growing, and it's more and more pervasive in our lives. And there was an Osterman research study in the first quarter of 2012 that found that the average employee spends 28 minutes per day using social media during work hours. 28 minutes. And that's not counting time spent away from work. That equates to about 2.9 work weeks annually. So with this shift in collaboration from email to social media, it's a must that you archive social media communications. This pervasiveness is making it essential to do that. Now, let's talk a little bit about when somebody misuses social media. The 2012 Osterman survey found that 73 to 79% of organizations do not archive users' content posted to social media. Large amount. And that 13% of organizations have terminated an employee because of something they posted on a social media site. 13%. I would imagine this could potentially grow as well. So let me talk about a couple of examples of employee misuse. There was in Oceanside, California, some employees at the Tri-City Medical Center actually posted patient information on Facebook. How would you feel if you were that patient, having your information posted out there? Obviously, there were repercussions there. In 2009, as far back as 2009, authorities investigated a situation in which an election exit poll results for 3 German states were leaked on Twitter prior to the polls. Crazy. Another one here is There was an employee of West Allis, Wisconsin, was fired for a Facebook post stating that she was addicted to alcohol and drugs, but even though she claimed that they were made in jest. But because she posted those, she was actually let go. I would imagine you probably have examples that you've seen, but there are countless examples of where social media misuse has actually cost people their jobs. Now let's take a look at the burden of regulatory compliance. As we said before, the majority of organizations don't archive social media content, despite these regulations, court decisions, and other guidance that suggest, actually strongly suggest, that you archive this content. So here's just some examples, as you can see on the screen, of the guidelines or the regulations for social media archiving and usage. Let me just highlight a couple of them. There's a lot, but and I suggest that everybody goes out and looks at what regulations apply to your industry. We know that there's heavily regulated industries like financial organizations, and some of the regulations that pertain to them are FINRA, SEC, NASD. These all talk about that you must retain records of social media. If there's any kind of communication going on about your dealings, that stuff needs to be archived. Then for government organizations, of course, they're regulated as well. Some of the things that apply to them are the NARA October 2010 Bulletin. And it basically just says as government agencies adopt these new web tools, they must comply with all records management, meaning that they must also archive these kind of communications. And then, of course, the FRCP applies to any kind of organization, because if you're involved in litigation, you better have archived that stuff, or you could be in big trouble. And then healthcare, of course, is highly regulated. And in healthcare, you've got the HIPAA laws, of course, and then high tech. These really explain the need to archive any of these kind of communications. They outline why you shouldn't be, they outline privacy. So if you're in healthcare, be aware of that as well. But really, there are portions of those laws that can really apply to social media. So it's imperative that you comply with these regulations, that you understand them and comply with them. Okay, so now we talked about the 5 reasons to archive social media. Quite a lot of information there, and you may be thinking to yourself, now what do I do? Now what? I want you to think about this. Are you guys concerned? Does this seem daunting, what you have to do, or are you determined to make a change? Well, there are a number of things that you can do yourselves to manage social media. I'm going to talk about those for just a minute. Okay. So, first of all, you need to be able to manage risks. You need to determine whether you should be using social media or not. Now, a lot of people might just think right off the bat and make a rash decision not to use social media at all. And just say, you know what, we're going to cut it off. However, there might be an advantage. There might be a competitive advantage to using social media. I mean, as we talked about, everyone's using it. I mean, figuratively, everyone. Most people are using social media. People are going to want to use it. You can't just ban it necessarily. There could be other repercussions. People are going to find a way around your ban. So really, what you need to do is you need to evaluate the risks and benefits. You should go across and see how social media is used right now. Who's using what? What tools are being used? Why they're using it? Which different employees are using these tools? You should be able to go through and you need to look and see how they could be used in the future. Maybe you should look at your competition and see how they're using social media. Go out to your competition's Facebook page and see what they're doing. But the point is, maybe you could even use enterprise solutions. But the point is that you need to look at that, create an analysis, do an audit, And then you could probably see in doing that analysis that there's probably a disconnect between what your IT, security, or compliance perceives as a legitimate application of social media and what users or maybe one of your business units perceives as legitimate. They could think that using social media in one way is fine, but then your IT or your security thinks that that's not fine. So really what you need to do is be able to have those groups come together, everybody across the organization, and see what's the best way to use social media, how you can get the most benefit and still be compliant with these regulations, with corporate policy and other security requirements. That's what you got to do. Go through and just look at what your situation is. Perform an audit. There's more you can do as well. Really, once you've looked at that and seen how your organization is doing, you need to put in some policies. These policies need to have a balance between employee freedom to gather information and communicate via social media and business benefits that will be derived from these tools. And of course, compliance with regulations and advice from your legal counsel. So build those policies. You may have policies right now about email usage, internet usage. Expound on those. Build some social media policies. Now, the social media policy should be considered regardless of whether your company chooses to use consumer tools like Facebook or Twitter, or if you use an enterprise social media tool. You should still have these policies. So some of the things that you need to consider when you're building these policies is, like I said, make sure it's part of the overall policy set. It should be focused on the use of social media tools as an overall messaging and communication policy. So those same policies that apply to corporate email, personal mail, instant messaging, collaboration workspaces, cloud-based storage, all this needs to be part of this policy. Any way in which a person is sharing corporate information should be applied into this policy. These policies should be granular, meaning that it should be deep enough that different roles in the organization should have clearly outlined policies. They should be able to know exactly what they should do. If somebody's in IT, what can they be doing? If somebody's upper management, somebody's in marketing, etc. These policies need to be granular. And these social media policies should have a detailed discussion about the appropriate use of social media tools. There absolutely needs to be requirements about not posting sexually or racially offensive comments or images. There shouldn't be links to inappropriate websites. The policy should clearly state that you can't defame or slander others, that you can't post content that could run afoul of copyright laws. Don't post personal records or other sensitive information. The policy should also state that posts should be in good taste, et cetera, et cetera. The list kind of goes on, but those are things that should be in there. Furthermore, this policy should be able to identify specific tools that can and cannot be used. And these tools should be clearly determined and say the rationale for the decision. And this should include social media sites themselves, as well as platforms by which these sites are accessed. Meaning, we're talking about, okay, you should be able to use social media and Twitter, but you should be able to use them this way. For example, on your home computer, smartphones, desktops, at work, etc. Now, as I stated before, you may think after all this stuff that we're talking about that it's best just to prohibit it. Prohibit Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. But this probably isn't going to work. If you just try and ban it, what will probably happen is you're going to lose control. Meaning that your employees are probably just going to use their personal devices. They all have smartphones. They're going to access them. So really the more reasonable approach would be to clearly outline what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Now, going along with that, this social media policy should clearly state that management reserves the right to monitor employee communication via social media. and it should say when it has the right to act on this information, meaning management, and that content may be retained for an indefinite period. So that should be part of your policy as well. I know I'm hitting a lot on this, but I just want you to know that this is stuff that needs to be there. It's going to protect you. There should also be discussion of succession planning, meaning if an employee leaves the organization, there needs to be a policy about who has ownership of followers or friends of that employee. For example, do followers on Twitter belong to the employer or to the employee? Are the employee's Facebook posts the property of his or her employer if they were posted during work hours? So think about that. Furthermore, we got to be talking about data breaches. These social media policies should spell out what the organization reaction to a data breach and consequences of that policy violation would be. For example, if an employee mistakenly tweets out a product announcement on a day before the press release is issued, or mistakenly posts secrets on a Facebook page, what are the consequences? What's going to happen if they violate this policy? And last, I want to just hit on there needs to be a mix of technology and policy. There are tools out there. There are solutions to be able to help you enforce this policy, to be able to monitor and archive social media. And of course, we'll talk about that a little further on. And as you can see here, the last thing on this screen, we actually have developed a sample social media policy, kind of discussing everything that we've just said here. If you want to review that, go ahead and go to info.com or info.guava.com/sample social media policy. And what we're going to do, just so everyone's aware, this webinar is being recorded. So everyone in attendance to this webinar is going to receive a recording. What I'll do as well, and I hope everyone will like this, I'll include that link in the email that I send out with the recording so that you can go there and check out that sample social media policy, download it, and see if you can use what's in there for your organization. Okay, let's move on. So back to what I said at the end of the last slide. You need to be able to manage social media. You need to deploy technologies that will do various things. These technologies, like I said, there are solutions out there that will help you. They can monitor posts, tweets, and other outbound content that an employee posts on social media. And really, this monitoring should be able to see if content that is placed violates your corporate policy, violates regulations or legal policies, especially in these heavily regulated industries that we talked about. Now, this monitoring may be after the fact, meaning that you may just archive social media and then go back and see what happened. Then some other things you need to do is be able to scan for and remediate malware. You need to be able to block threats that can enter an organization through social media. Some things to think about is social media has a widespread use of shortened URLs. It doesn't give you that visual clue. You know, generally speaking, back in the day when you get an email and there was some weird link in there, you wouldn't click on it because it was a weird link. Well, now we've got these little URLs. They can be dangerous. So really, that's one of the fundamental problems with social media from a security perspective. They're generally less well defended than more established tools like email. You know, there's not a lot out there. We know there's a lot of anti-spam, antivirus. Guava provides antivirus, anti-spam. But what's out there for protecting social media? We'll talk about that a little bit. And of course, with the rapid increase of these tools, you're probably scrambling to keep up with this growth of social media so that you could be vulnerable. So back to that Osterman survey that we talked about a little bit. That survey found that in addition to Facebook, organizations had malware infiltrate through a variety of social media tools. including YouTube and Google+. So one thing that you may consider is using an enterprise-grade social media platform. Not quite as risky there. And of course, as we've stated before, it's critical to archive and log all content that may constitute a business record and might need to be retained for long periods. It's usually easier to archive or log social media content than take the risk that some important content might slip through the cracks and not be retained. So really, this is kind of what we were saying before. There needs to be this mix of policy and technology to support it. If you do that, you're going to be better off. Okay. And then what I wanted to finally touch on, and then we'll get into some of the solutions that Guava has, is the best way to ensure that you mitigate the risks of social media misuse is by implementing a solution that archives social media. Now, when you're choosing a solution, make sure to look for a tool that has a central search that complies with the requirements of different government regulations, that includes built-in e-discovery tools and archives messages in their context. This is going to make your life so much easier. And like I said, since this is a Guava webinar, of course we're going to discuss the solution that we provide for archiving social media. So let's get into that for a few minutes here. So, you may or may not have heard of Retain. I hope all of you have. But Retain Unified Archiving provides multi-platform unified messaging archiving, e-discovery, and publishing. This will help you reduce your costs, manage complexity, and mitigate these risks that we've been talking about. And it can be deployed on-premise or in the cloud. Now, something cool about Retain is that it archives single or mixed messaging platform environments. So any kind of email system you're using, it'll archive. And of course, we're talking about social media here. We also archive social media and mobile. And the great thing is all of this is archived in one central archive, which can be accessed via the web interface that we have, a web access interface that you can access from any web-enabled device. And now you can access your email, your social, your mobile stuff, all from one central archive. And Retain has modules that you can turn off or turn on depending on what you need. If you need the mobile piece, you can turn that module on. If you need the email piece, you can turn that on. If you need the mobile, email, and social, you can have all those pieces in one. And of course, each user has the right to search, publish, and perform e-discovery of the archive. And you can grant other teams rights as well. So if you have a legal person that needs to come in and view your archive, you can grant them rights to go ahead and search that. And there's an audit trail there. And of course, the social media archiving piece is called Retain Social, and that securely archives social media communications from Facebook and Twitter. It also archives link instant messages via Exchange. And this archive data can be instantly retrieved and reviewed in context within the conversation thread. Meaning, so, okay, you want to go back and look at somebody's Facebook wall and see how that person was communicating, you'll be able to see in context what that was. Say there was a volley of tweets going across. I'm directly tweeting somebody. They're tweeting me back. I'll be able to see that whole string in their context. So what this is going to do is going to be able to protect you, your employees, and your organization. So if there's an unfounded allegation, you can check on it. It can be verified. Your employees can easily be cleared of wrongdoing because you'll have a record of what actually happened, what was actually said, all within context. And when bad behavior is happening, Retain Social will provide you with that record as well. So what this does, it'll help you enforce policies because people will see that their social media is actually being archived. You can encourage appropriate behavior while deterring inappropriate behavior. And of course, by archiving with Retain, you ensure that you're complying with these government regulations, as we were saying, like FRCP, FINRA, SOX, etc. This will help you avoid these risks that we were talking about, these fines, these sanctions, etc. You'll be prepared. I'm going to show you a little bit here. So here's an example of the web interface. Here is the active Facebook messages. Now, when you're browsing this archive, whether that's a user and an administrator, they can quickly see who the message is from. So you can see here, this is an archive, a shot of that. So you see who it's from, the subject, who received that message. They'll be able to see the date that the message was sent. And then from this tab, a user and an administrator can place a hold on the message. They can forward that message, tag it, delete it if needs be. They can export, restore, print the message. And of course, a searchable time period can be specified, whether that was in the last year, the last 6 months, or the previous week. Retain allows for a number of time periods to be searched. So you don't have to know what the message said necessarily. You can search and use some great and powerful search tools there. Now, here is an example of a search. So from the search tab, a keyword search has been started here. You can search simpler, complex terms. So if you know the term you're looking for, go ahead and put that in. And the results of the searches will appear in the Web Access Archive list. And of course, from this search, you can perform those same functions as when browsing, like hold, tag, delete, right from here. So quick and easy. And you can access this from any web device. And here's an example of the thread that I was talking about. This is we call the intelligent threading, or messages archived in their context. So this is an entire conversation that went on between these two individuals, and we can see it in the context. And moving along, as we stated earlier, it's a unified archive. And what we mean by unified archiving is that all the messages, mobile, email, and social media, are all accessible at the same time. This is actually something very unique to retain. It's the only archiving solution to display all communications from one easy-to-use archive viewer. This search was made, it went across and found everything. You can see email, you can see Facebook, Twitter, and even mobile stuff, all from one central archive. Think how much that's going to save time and effort. So we talked about social media archiving, and that it gives you the ability to go back and see what communications has happened. This functionality is great, and like we said, it's required by government regulations. However, we do have a solution here at Guava that will help you ensure that this harmful, violent, or inappropriate social media communication never takes place. And this solution is provided through the use of web content monitoring and filtering. So this is a part of the Guava product. Guava Web Content Monitoring, it allows you to monitor and filter content before it is ever posted to social media. So you can actually monitor and filter postings to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and other social media. You can monitor and block searches. And you can also, these video sharing sites like we talked about, YouTube, Vimeo, other video sharing sites, these can all be filtered. And of course, the Guava interface actually alerts managers if inappropriate internet traffic happens, if people are trying to visit inappropriate sites or they're trying to post inappropriate content. That is all, those alerts happen via email or on the Guava interface. Here's an example. There's a couple of screenshots here. So this is how you'd set up the web filtering in Guava. It's integrated via an ICAP interface. And then here's an example of a message being blocked due to a policy violation. Looks like somebody was trying to send out a contact list. Guava actually blocked that. It kept that from going out. So these are these tools that work in tandem. You have Guava monitoring the communications and retain archiving them. These solutions working in tandem will give you that complete protection. So to finish up, Here are those top 5 reasons to archive social media. We have at Guava the solutions to fulfill these reasons, and moreover, as I stated, you'll have complete protection with Guava and Retain. You can monitor and filter that social media content with Guava and archive it with Retain. Now, if you'd like more information about the needs for archiving social media, or if you'd like to discuss these tools, feel free to contact us. Our phone number, if you don't know, is 866-GO-GUAVA. You can visit us on the web at guava.com, or you can send us an email at questions@guava.com. And of course, you can try out these solutions for yourself. If you go to guava.com/download, you can actually download these solutions and see how they'll help you. So, we have some time for some questions, and I could see that there was a number of questions coming through. Let's go ahead and go over once again. If you have any questions, feel free to put them on in the chat or the Q&A panel. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to go through a number of these. Sorry, I'm just taking a second to digest them all. You got a few in here, so that's good. Let's see. We have one here that says, is the FRCP requirements only applicable to the workplace? Meaning if you have your personal social media separate from work, why would that be applicable? Great point. So FRCP is talking about, of course, the communications within the organization. That's mainly what we're talking about. However, it could also apply to business communications outside of work. So if you're communicating via your social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc., and it's a business communication, you need to be archiving that. So the FRCP can apply to that. Okay, let's see. Following along, what products are currently supported by Retain? And I think that's referring to the slide that we had with the circle there. I can go back to that slide here in just a minute here. So right now, the products that are supported, all the email that we see here, Exchange, GroupWise, Office 365, and Gmail, those are all supported for archiving in the email side of it. The mobile side, Android and BlackBerry are current, and then we're looking towards the other two there of iOS and Windows. And then on social, right now, when we're talking about the archiving piece, it's Facebook and Twitter along with Link. We're looking towards Google Talk, of course, some others here. These are all on our roadmap to hopefully do soon. And of course, with the filtering side of it, we can filter all of that. Okay, the next one is SharePoint support available. Right now, we do not do anything with SharePoint, something that we may be considering, but right now, nothing with SharePoint. So the next one is Twitter and other social media defaults to SSL port 443. Retain can monitor traffic via SSL. Correct. And we could get somebody on the phone with you to exactly tell you how that works technically. But yes, it can monitor that traffic. It integrates via an ICAP device with your firewall to be able to monitor as traffic comes in or goes out. Let's see, there might be some others in the chat here. Thanks for all the questions, great. Okay, the next one is, you mentioned deleting messages. Is that possible on an email by email basis? Yes, this is I answered that pretty quick. Yes, deleting messages. This is a feature of the archive, but this is based on a per user. This is not set up by default, but it is something that you can go through and manage. So if you want to give certain users the right to delete a message, you can. But by default, it is not set up that way to be able to comply with these regulations, because the regulations state that you should be able to have an archive that does not allow for end users to delete. However, in some organizations, you may need that functionality. So I hope that answers your question there. And let's see. And that, I think that got, oh, there was one other one, kind of goes along with the one we said before, is what about support for instant messaging? And instant messaging could really fall under this idea of social media as well. Yeah, we support archiving of link via Exchange. And then we're looking towards other IM support like Google Chat. I mean, since we archive Gmail, next logical step would be Google Chat. I can't promise anything, of course, so don't quote me on that, but it is something we're looking towards. All right, if there's any other questions, feel free to put them through. There's a lot of great questions here. Otherwise, we'll be sure to answer them offline. And of course, you can always email us if you have questions. Okay, I think we got to all of them. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for your time, for your interest in this topic, and thanks for your participation. Once again, I just want to finish up by saying that archiving social media, it's a relatively new thing to be thinking about, but it is something we need to be considering. And Guava provides tools to help you. So please feel free to contact us, and we'll be able to help you with this new challenge. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day or evening.